Hello and welcome to the Intentional Brief, your weekly video update on the one big thing in cybersecurity news for middle market companies, their investors, and executive teams. I'm your host, Shay Colson, managing partner at Intentional Cybersecurity, and you can find us online at intentionalcyber.com. Today is Wednesday, December 4th, and I am just as surprised as you are that December is already here, but here we are. The holidays are upon us, New Year after that. So make sure to get done what you need to get done. The calendar does not wait for anyone. This week we're tracking a story that's been developing since before the Thanksgiving holiday, back on November 21st, and that is the ransomware attack on supply chain management platform Blue Yonder, used by companies across the world, including Starbucks, Walgreens, Anheuser-Busch InBev, and others. The Wall Street Journal, in fact, noted that the impact on Starbucks workers included that they couldn't get paid for the hours they actually worked, only the ones that they were actually scheduled for, because the back office was down entirely. By way of background, Blue Yonder is a company that was acquired by Panasonic a few years back for more than $7 billion. And actually it was announced in 2022 that Panasonic was intending to spin them out as a public company, although that hasn't happened yet. And frankly, now I think it makes it a little less likely for that to happen. Certainly doesn't help. But the firm has now admitted that the attack is ransomware, and their latest update comes after a long period of silence from November 24th to earlier this week, December 1st. And in the absence of updates from the company, many have been speculating on other channels about the actual extent of the incident, with some suggesting that their intelligence indicates the attackers got into Blue Yonder's private cloud at the hypervisor level, deleted all of their backups and disaster recovery capabilities, and then encrypted all 5 data centers. Yeesh. So this sounds like pretty much a catastrophic takedown from a ransomware perspective. So what can we learn from this, both for ourselves and for our vendors? I think first things first, we have very little to go on here in terms of actual data and information about the attack, which regular viewers will know is a pet peeve of mine, this lack of intelligence sharing about how attackers are actually carrying out these sort of attacks so that the rest of us can improve our defenses. But we do know that a few things would be helpful. First, immutable backups. Setting your backups to roll off at a defined interval where you work with your legal and privacy teams to figure out what your data retention requirements are, and then essentially set it and forget it and don't allow deletion would have been very helpful in this case. In fact, I saw recently from the UK's NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Center, they published some guidance recently on a ransomware resistant backup approach for both cloud and on-prem that is linked below. It is very helpful. I suggest you check it out. The second is to prevent that hypervisor compromise. So for things that are this critical to our enterprise, again, the hypervisor runs all of the virtual machines that are guests on that host. It's worth ensuring that you've got layers of defense that give you a fighting chance. And this is things like making sure MFA is in place, maybe using bastion hosts to limit the access to those hypervisor or admin consoles, and then using a privileged access management or PAM tool to help support this infrastructure. Again, all with logging, monitoring, and alerting behind it, of course. And the third would be network segmentation. Like everything in security, this one brings a balance or trade-off between friction and risk reduction, as the more segmentation you create, the more you need to manage. But it can also really help keep incidents from this, from taking everything down and really making the blast radius more manageable for what it's worth. So if you've got these top 3 things checked off in your enterprise, in your own environment, what should we make of this challenge around the digital supply chain or this third-party risk management TPRM play, where our vendors might not be quite as diligent as we are or as we would like, or even as they say they are in the case of Blue Yonder, whose business continuity touting page is currently also down, which is ironic. But the basics of this answer are not a technical problem, but rather a business one. So for us, we need to understand what vendors are critical and in what ways. What do they do for us? How long can we afford to be without these services or capabilities? And what's our contingency plan if they're not available? So in the case of Blue Yonder, now we're going into the better part of 2 weeks, which means we've got concerns about perishable inventory, pay periods and schedules, and other mechanics that we need to ensure that our businesses are functional on a day-to-day basis. So while you can spend a tremendous amount of energy building a TPRM program, setting standards for vendors, conducting audits, I think a more tangible step is to build some contingency plans for our own business, and then just add contractual clauses to make sure that you're made whole in the event of outages such as this. Beyond that, it's likely still more work than it's worth, and you've got a shop of your own to mind. Axios noted today in their code newsletter that attackers are shifting from a strategy of data breaches to just total destruction, and perhaps Blue Yonder is simply at the leading edge of this shift. From a fundraising perspective, given the holiday week here in the US, it's not surprising to see a pretty low number of newly committed capital coming in at just $1.5 billion this last week, a low for Q4 and maybe for the entire year. I did not look back that far, but that said, we're continuing to see deal flow in the private markets, and we're watching the ServiceTitan IPO as a bellwether heading into 2025, and we'll see what the new year brings us. With that, a reminder that you can find all the articles we talked about in the comments section below. You can find back issues and written transcripts of these videos at intentionalcyber.com, and we will see you next week for another edition of the Intentional Brief.